Hi, my name is Linda Ford, and welcome to Animal Adventures! Today, we're going to be learning all about wildlife and nature at New Hampshire Audubon Willard Pond Wildlife Sanctuary. So come along and join me! Hi, I'm going to have so much fun. I'm going to get to go on the canoe with Phil Brown to explore the pond and see wildlife from a canoe. How awesome is that?
My name is Phil Brown. I'm the Director of Land Management at New Hampshire Audubon, and we're a statewide conservation organization founded in 1914. And we have properties all over the state that we call wildlife sanctuaries. So my job is to manage these 39 properties, which constitute over 7,500 acres of land. Willard Pond can be a really busy place in the summer, especially out on the water. I've seen 20 or 30 boats out here, mostly people in individual kayaks, just exploring all the wild corners of this pond. Really a lake. It's 108 acres, so it's a pretty good size, and there are no houses along the shoreline, which makes it pretty unique for a pond this size in the region. If you look around, it's just all woods and wetlands, and it's a nice deep lake, nice clear water, a lot of wildlife, and we're surrounded by protected conservation land. The Willard Pond Sanctuary itself is New Hampshire Audubon's largest. It's about 1,700 acres. So it's well larger than anything else we own in any one holding. And in addition to that, it's called the Super Sanctuary, a term that was coined a few decades ago by a former caretaker, Meade Caddo, who lived out here at Willard Pond and later at the Harris Center. Meade and the Harris Center went on to protect over 20,000 acres surrounding this parcel between Audubon and other conservation partners in the region. So we are in the middle of this large, intact, unfragmented forest block, we call it. So animals such as moose and bobcat and bear and loons and eagles can be free and wild and have the space requirements that they need. Those animals, many of them require many square miles to cover for their territory, so bobcats can range many square miles in the course of a year, so it'll do well in an environment like this one. So this is the grassiest cove of the lake, probably one of the most protected areas for water birds. I see a lot of ducks in this cove in migration, but this year, for the first year in the years that I can remember, and I've been out here 11 years, a loon nested right in this cove. So we'll take a nice close look at its nest here. We're going to go right up to the nest, which is a fine thing to do this time of year after the young have left the nest. There's no danger in it. As you can see, we've already taken the ropes down that used to protect this cove in the earlier part of the summer. And from here in this cove, you also get a perspective of Bald Mountain being a true mountain out over the pond's edge. You can see a nice snag on its right flank.
Loons return to northern forested lakes and rivers in the springtime, usually in April or early May. The breeding range includes Alaska and much of Canada, south to portions of Washington, Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. Loons spend the winter season along the Atlantic, Pacific, and Gulf of Mexico coasts. Some loons winter on inland reservoirs. Water quality is important for successful breeding. Loons are visual predators, so clear water is crucial for effective foraging, as well as abundance of small fish, numerous small islands, and irregular shoreline that creates coves. However, uses a wide variety of freshwater aquatic habitats, including reservoirs. Crayfish constitute a major part of diet when fish are scarce or water is murky. Food capture and consumption. Loons find prey by peering into water while swimming, eyes beneath surface, also by searching and probing around vegetation and objects in water column, and on bottom while swimming underwater. While searching for prey, holds body at an angle anterior and lowest, with neck forming low S-curve. Jerks head and neck forward synchronously with propulsion stroke of legs, then retracts them between strokes. Eyes are briefly fixed relative to surroundings and advantage in detecting motion. As pursuit starts, jerking stops. Eyes are fixed on prey. Loons' nests are usually situated on a low mass of vegetation near water, often on an island, and usually contain 2 olive-brown, lightly spotted eggs. The green frog. This species is a mid-sized true frog. Adult green frogs range from 2.0 to 3.9 inches in body length. The typical body weight of this species is 0.99 to 3.0 ounces. Green frogs live wherever shallow freshwater ponds, roadside ditches, lakes, swamps, streams, and brooks are found, most often seen resting along the shore. They leap into the water when approached. Green frogs will attempt to eat any moss-sized animal they can capture, including insects, spiders, fish, crayfish, shrimp, other frogs, tadpoles, small snakes, birds, and snails. Tadpoles graze on algae and water plants. Green frog tadpoles are olive green and iridescent creamy white below. Metamorphosis can occur within the same breeding season, or tadpoles may outwinter to metamorphose the next summer. Green frogs breed in semi-permanent or permanent fresh water. Males call from and defend territories. The distinctive call sounds like a plucked banjo string.
Yeah, not a bad day on the job for sure. So we do regular programs out at Willard Pond Sanctuary, in addition to our typical Audubon centers in Concord and Auburn and up on Newfound Lake. But in the fall, we have a workshop, a trail building workshop with the Student Conservation Association. That's happening this September, where volunteers can come out and work alongside of an experienced trail crew to learn about certain trail building techniques, such as water bars and bridging with natural materials. We do a hawk watch program all fall long at nearby Packman-Adnock Mountain. And we usually have a variety of field trips in combination with the Harris Center, a local conservation group. And hikes usually occur going up Bald Mountain, sometimes Goodhue Hill, which is this long round hill on this side of us. There's a large clearing on top. We've been experimenting with wildlife patch cuts, trying to bring in a new generation of trees to allow for species that are becoming a little harder to find, such as some of our songbirds. So we have a 15-acre clearing that was put in a few years ago on top of Goodhue Hill. It's just been a magnet for some of these breeding birds that are somewhat scarce in the region. We have mourning warblers, which are now frequenting the area in late spring, a couple of years in a row. Different types of warblers that nest there, chestnut-sided, common yellowthroats, which are more familiar. So lots of wildlife observation on Goodhue Hill, and in addition to an amazing view of the ridgeline to the north of us. There's a wind farm proposal that we're looking at right next to this property to develop 10 wind turbines. And that's something that Audubon hasn't been in favor of because of its impacts to the sanctuary and recreation and to the wildlife of the area. Hawk now, somewhere over Bald Mountain, out in that direction. There's a hiking trail that goes right to the summit of Bald Mountain, right up into those spruce trees, and you can see some rocky outcrops about halfway up that mountain. That provides just a stunning view of where we are right now. It looks like you're right above the pond. It's about 650 vertical feet above the pond's level. And it doesn't look like it's right over us, but from up there it looks like you were right over the pond. So well worth, one of the best hikes around, I think. It's written up in all of the guidebooks as one of the best short to moderate hikes. It's about 1.5 miles each way. It's a little bit steep in sections, but take a picnic lunch, enjoy the view, do some fall hawk watching. Nice mix of plants on this property. The trees here are very diverse as well. Up high in the higher elevations, we go up to 2,000 feet on Bald Mountain. We have a red spruce community, which is a good place to hide an owl or two, and a lot of the nesting birds that are more northern typically. So Willard Pond, even though it's in southern New Hampshire, it has this northern feel to it, and I guess maybe that's why I'm a little bit more drawn to this area. The oak trees, I'm noticing this year, are producing a lot of acorns, so we have a good mast year coming up, we call it. Good for wildlife. Deer, turkeys, squirrels, blue jays, even wood ducks will feed on acorns. So you think of wood ducks being in the water, but they're sometimes pulling acorns out of the water too. A small group of migrating birds that I'm hearing, maybe a mixed feeding flock going through. Oh, there's one now, kind of sallying about in the upper branches of the oak trees. It's going to be a little hard to catch up to the movement. Let's see. So it pays to get out early if you're a fisherman out here. In late April, last weekend in April every year is when they stock this pond and open it for the first day of trout season, and there are some prize trout that are taken out of this pond every year. So the fishermen will get here 5 or 6 in the morning and just load up that parking lot. I've seen 30 cars in that lot on a late April morning with snow on the ground, still snowing. Fishermen out here in the 30-degree water. So they're catching fish.
I noticed these rock formations are kind of unique. They kind of look real squarish like.
Yeah, that's probably the way they broke apart. The forces that have put these rocks here and broken them apart are glacial action and other sort of water erosion action, ice. The splitting of these rocks occurred with a lot of pressure and expansion from ice and water. But if you look at the hills just to the north and west of here where these were deposited from, you can get an idea that these are from the parent material. They're the parent material of the hills around them. So we can't call these true glacial erratics. So the former loon nest, where the loon nested many years, was that little black rock just beyond that purple pickerel weed flower. We're drifting away from the shore a bit. Very shallow water in there, and the loons weren't terribly productive in that site. I think they did much better this year because this area is a little more protected from paddlers. And what we'll do every year is rope off the area where the loons are nesting in partnership with the Loon Preservation Committee, which is a group of folks, and they have a staff person in the Monadnock region every summer. So we'll get a volunteer to help them out and follow the loons, and these loons will be tracked very closely by the general public visiting, and they're well cared for. So loons have a nice voice in this area for keeping them common.
Yeah, I've heard about the loons in New Hampshire, especially like up in north of here too.
Up in the Lakes region?
Yeah.
Right, yeah, they're on Winnipesaukee and Squam Lake.
Yeah.
The Monadnock region didn't do as well this year for some reason. It seems like the early results are showing that there weren't as many surviving chicks in this part of the state. So each year that's very closely studied and analyzed. This is the first thing that greets most visitors as they enter the Willard Pond Sanctuary towards the end of the road, right into this big granite rock with these nice lichens hanging on it is a sign in memory of Elsa Tudor de Pierrefeu, the donor of the sanctuary. In 1967, she made the first donation to the National Audubon Society then of 650 acres, including that little caretaker's cottage that we saw on the way in. And so this is in honor of her. She was a real nature lover, a pacifist in every way, really ahead of her time, a really amazing woman, a countess as well. That was her official title. So the trail that loops the mill pond has been somewhat dedicated to her by a group of students who decided to write a trail guide a few years ago. So under my guidance and that of some teachers, they put together a trail guide with different natural landmarks along it. Balanced rocks at Willard Pond, one of several that occur on the property, naturally balanced. It looks fairly precarious, but somehow it has stood the test of time. These are glacially deposited boulders. Again, the same parent material from Bald Mountain and the other hills up north and west of here. And it creates an excellent wildlife environment. Porcupines love to den under these rocks. They find little nooks underneath the bigger rocks and some flat areas, and they will spend the winter going between the hemlock trees around here where they're feeding and underneath those rocks. You'll find these little porcupine trails in the winter. It's an excellent place for tracking animals. In addition, you find things that are actually tracking porcupines besides humans. Fishers will eat porcupines, and we do find fisher tracks around this area as they're going after porcupines. You think, how does one catch and eat a porcupine? Not the easiest thing to do, but fishers have a way of doing it. But bats will occasionally be seen around here. Bats will, from the barn across the street, will come out and feed in this area. A great place to just take shelter and sit here and just wonder too, because it's such a large boulder. Really a beautiful thing to see. So we're entering the Mill Pond Trail now from Willard Pond Road. This is a nice little short loop trail, the easiest trail on the property. It's relatively flat, but it does have a couple of steeper sections that cross the brook. You have to be careful walking across the brook on either side of this pond. The Hatch Mill Pond is the official name. It's about a 3-acre pond, and it was used historically as a sawmill site. And we're going to see some human evidence of that sawmill site. It's also a fantastic area to watch wildlife, and it takes you half an hour to 40 minutes usually to loop around the pond at a leisurely pace. So this location has porcupine written all over it. It has the right combination of big rocky boulders with crevices underneath. It has the hemlock trees, which are a good food source, so a lot to eat above you, a lot of cover below. It has the structure without roads interfering. Porcupines are really subject to getting hit by cars a lot. So porcupines do very well here at Willard Pond. This tree has been porcupined, I call it. You can see the way this hemlock tree is growing. It has this open growth form, which is really the result of porcupines over the decades eating the top part of this tree, the main leader of this hemlock tree, resulting in all these side branches starting to come outward and find light. So it's been given this bonsai tree kind of look, which you don't typically see on a native hemlock tree. And this is a long-standing porcupine den site. This has been here for as long as our former naturalist Meade Caddo can remember, 40 years ago when he was the caretaker out at Willard Pond, and a few years back when we led a group of mammal trackers out here for an Antioch mammal tracking class. And you can see the porcupine scat. It really doesn't decompose quickly. Its shaped and size is similar to little peanuts. There's also, if I poke around in here, you can see a hemlock cone, which looks similar in shape and size. But these porcupine pellets are just these tiny little peanut-shaped, very woody, both wood that they've been eating and the pine needles, and I'm sorry, hemlock needles. You can kind of see where some of the needles have fallen in. But that pile just never seems to go away. So it decomposes very slowly, but that's a typical spot where you might find a porcupine on the side of the trail. Trying to find ways to coexist with the beaver, though. And the beavers have a way of creating amazing habitat for the rest of the wildlife that we're concerned about. So we're happy with what they're doing. They're keeping the water level high. Ducks will benefit from having a deeper pond to swim and fish in. The ospreys and the eagles. And the cycle of beaver meadows to ponds is a really fascinating one too. We have all different stages along this wetland system between Willard Pond itself upstream and down towards Moose Brook, which comes in just a little ways down along Willard Pond Road. So there's beaver meadows, there are areas full of grasses, great place for deer to take cover. A lot of wetland nesting birds such as flycatchers will be nesting there. Otters really take advantage of beaver habitat. Mink as well. Mink I've seen several times in this beaver dam itself, feeding and possibly even establishing their own areas for breeding within the beaver dam. One of my favorite summer blooms is the cardinal flower, which seems to really light up the month of August in my mind. It's one of the few late summer blooms that we have as a native plant, so I look forward to it all summer long. But it also kind of reminds me of the end of summer a little bit, so it's bittersweet in a way. There's a family group of broad-winged hawks. It looks like 3 juveniles and 2 adults circling over our highest point, Bald Mountain. Probably just exercising their wings a little bit, getting ready for the upcoming migration, which will happen over the month of September. Broad-winged hawks are a really fascinating species that are very typical in the woods of New Hampshire in the summertime. They all vacate though by early October. The whole population departs, and they seemingly all leave together, migrating in these huge groups of sometimes up to a couple of thousand together. I've seen 7,000 in one day at one of our hawk watch sites. So they can migrate all at once in September, all the way down to Brazil, is where their winter destination is. Brazil and Central America. So they make these thin, high-pitched calls that you hear all summer long, that a lot of people don't really associate with hawks. But right now they're just kind of enjoying the warm day and catching some thermals, some heat off of the bare rock on the top of Bald Mountain. What I have here is seemingly a part of a crayfish that likely was preyed upon by something or other, maybe a mink, maybe an otter. Both are crayfish eaters. Also, a good food source for herons. Kingfishers will rely on these sometimes. So I was able to catch the crayfish, but not that live frog.
I have had so much fun today hiking and canoeing at Willard Pond Wildlife Sanctuary, New Hampshire, Audubon. It was so much to see and learn, and I had such a wonderful time on such a beautiful day. And thank you so much, Phil, for helping us out today. So until the next time, have your own animal adventure!